I'm Ellis Martin with InvestorNews and the Critical Minerals Institute, and it's my extreme pleasure to have my friend Jack Lifton with us today. He's a founding principal of technology metals research, co-chairman of the Critical Minerals Institute, and a consultant, author, and lecturer on the market fundamentals of technology metals, a term which he coined, technology metals. With decades of experience in the field, Jack is a recognized authority on rare earths, lithium, and other critical materials essential to modern technology. He's advised governments, corporations, and investors globally with a focus on resource sustainability, supply chain security, and geopolitical implications of critical mineral production and trade. And he's a frequent speaker at industry events, some of which I attend, and contributes to discussions on mining policy, technology, innovation, and the future of resource economics. And the first question I have for you, Jack, is this. Are you the little birdie or the big birdie that whispered critical minerals, critical metals, and rare earths into Donald Trump's ears? Because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he just started talking about it.
Absolutely not. In my opinion, very briefly, is that the critical materials interest by the administration is fleeting. Okay, and they'll be on to the next topic any day. That's why I find the gyrations of the market every time Donald Trump belches something about minerals, the market swoons and rises. And I think this is just a matter of people are very naive about how government works. Government goes from crisis to crisis without ever looking back.
Well, you've been in the critical minerals, and previously it was called just the rare earth space
Yeah.
for many years. I've been covering it for almost 20 years. Are we finally getting the traction that all of us thought we'd have eventually? Is it there now?
I don't really think so. I think this is mostly a mirage because the the actual the actual rare earth materials we use are rare earth enabled products that whose properties depend on the electronic properties of the rare earths. Now, the sentence I've just said is not going to be understood by 99.9% of the audience. So it doesn't matter. Rare earths electronic properties are what we use, not their metallurgical properties.
I understand there's many questions that I have that are related to that. So who's investing in the sector right now? Who's putting the money into the market?
Other than retail investors and day traders,
Are they doing it? Are they doing it?
I don't think so. I think what's happening now is institutional investors are taking it, in my opinion, are taking advantage of the um, huffing and puffing going on about rare earths, and I think it's coming from because there's no way that the small investors could cause these literally billion-dollar a day changes. Okay, I mean, if you look at MP or USA rare earths in the American market, I'm talking about, these have multi-billion-dollar valuations. These kinds of stocks are not affected, in my opinion, by day traders. These are institutions taking a look at this, and that's what's going on.
But if you're following these stocks and you're following the institutions as a savvy either day trader or retail investor, you can make some money right now if you pay
Oh,
attention to people like us in the Investor News and Critical Minerals Institute, right?
yeah, but you have to really be on top of it. You don't take any naps. Okay, I mean uh, this is a very fast moving market up and down. So yes, of course you can.
All right. What are the biggest supply chain vulnerabilities for North America right now, and how can they be realistically addressed? Are we in trouble? Or are we just
Yeah,
paying more for everything?
yeah. The problem is we have lost institutional memory, and I'm talking about in engineering. So uh, the last time there was a major company processing rare earths commercially in the United States was probably 30, 35 years ago, and Molycorp at that time, the original Molycorp. Okay. Now, the Molycorp went bankrupt because of Chinese pricing competition at the end of the 20th century. And then the company basically went dormant. Okay. At the same time, the major magnet manufacturer in North America, Magnequench, which had been set up by General Motors and Sumitomo in the late 70s, early 80s, they also went broke. Same reason. Chinese pricing just overwhelmed them. And there were a lot of factors. General Motors at the time decided they didn't want to be vertically integrated anymore. So they went to just in time and letting other people hold inventory, the cost of inventory. And they got rid of their Delco parts division, and Magnequench all went. Okay, that all went. And as you probably know, Magnequench was purchased by a newly formed Canadian company called Neo Materials, ultimately. And then they moved its operations to China. And that was the end of processing in the United States. We still had, in the early part of the century, we had one or two magnet makers still making rare earth permanent magnets in America. But they were already then using Chinese feedstock because we no longer produced what they needed to make magnets. Okay. And if you may recall, there has been a previous rare earth boom in this century, I believe is 2010, 11, 12. Okay. The problem there is that was all smoke, no flames, because what happened was nobody created any downstream processing. One exception was Molycorp, which had been reborn, attempted to build what would then have been the world's largest rare earth separation plant. That didn't work out, and they went bankrupt again. And so far, of the 250 rare earth juniors that I identified in the year 2012, that was with Technology Metals Research, by 2020, exactly one of them had produced rare earths, and that was Linus of Australia. Okay, so that's not a very good average, 1 over 250. And now we're back into recognition that downstream is very important, downstream processing in supply chain. But it's my opinion. I know I don't want to give you chapter and verse or bibliography, but I don't think that most of the people talking about rare earth processing downstream of mining really know what they're doing. And so I'm very concerned that most of it is hype. Okay. And the fact is, if you're going to mine rare earths, the largest primary rare earth mine in the world is probably Mountain Pass, California, because rare earths are invariably byproducts. There's two primary deposits that I'm aware of that are actually worked. One is Mountain Pass, California. That's the mineral bastosite. The other one is Mount Weld, Australia, where the principal mineral is monazite. Okay. These are primary. Both have companies that operate them and take them downstream to separated high purity rare earths. There's MP and there's Linus. Okay. Now, no one else I know of that has a mine has a separation plant. And the problem there is the separation plant produces high purity oxides. Those high purity oxides then go to a metal maker, metal and alloy maker, who makes alloys to specification from a magnet maker. So he has to have a customer. Okay. And if you don't have the separated individual rare earths, what's the point of having a metal maker? And if you don't have a metal maker, what's the point of having a magnet maker? So I'm wondering when people are going to begin to slow down and look at the rare earth permanent magnet supply chain and say, well, here's what we need to do. Now, maybe the government of the United States has done that. I don't really know. But the problem is, let's say you identify the fact that America has only, that I am aware of, two operational separation plants. And I don't know the size of one MP because they're not disclosing. Energy Fuels in Denver has their plant in Utah, 5,000 ton light rare earth plant. If you don't remember anything I say today, this is what you need to remember one thing. There is no heavy rare earth production in the Americas at this point, and there is no heavy rare earth separation plant to produce the high purity oxides necessary to make the rare earth metals necessary for making high coercivity magnets.
Is it realistic, Jack, to think that we're going to bring that downstream production and refinery capabilities back to North America in the short term or even in the long term? Is that even realistic?
No, in the short term, absolutely not, because we're relearning a lot of things. Okay, this is I'm trying to think. The only analogy I could think of is, once you learn how to do sex, you probably never forget. You can do it for the rest of your life, but it's not the same. It's not the same as manufacturing things. So if you study in university, then you take a job as a junior engineer, and the old guys, they show you, hey, yeah, kid, that's in the book, but it doesn't work. This is what happens. And oh my God, it turned green. It's supposed to be red. I wonder what we did wrong. Oh, well, let's go to the bar and think about it. Okay, so by the time you learn how to really do things, you're a seasoned engineer. But in order to do that, you have to have a job. It's very important. Now, if you specialized in rare earth metal making, you're unemployable. You might have a job in the home cleaning industry, or perhaps at McDonald's, but there was no one up till right now who would hire you as a rare earth metallurgist, metal maker. Okay, so we lost that skill. Now, I was asked by the Department of Defense the last time this became important in 2017, how do we staff a total rare earth permanent magnet supply chain? I said, well, my guess would be cemeteries would be my first choice. Second would be assisted care homes. Third would be finding guys like me who are still mobile, living on their own, and actually know how to do it. And they said, do you think you're funny? I said, oh, I think this is tragic, not funny. Okay. You cannot simply, with money, create institutional memory. That's silly. We know that. The Chinese know that. The Chinese have been doing the things I'm talking about for 30 years plus without stopping. I know of 3 universities in the United States that have courses in rare earth chemistry or metallurgy. Okay. They maybe graduate 12 people a year, 15 people a year. In China, we guess, my colleagues and I guess, there's probably 100,000 people already with this kind of knowledge base. And it's been 30 years. The Chinese rare earth industry is huge. It constitutes at least 90% of the world's rare earth industry.
On your point, given the current supply chain interdependence,
Yeah.
foresee a scenario where the US and China can move from competition to collaboration in critical minerals, or is that simply unrealistic in the current climate?
I don't think it's realistic because I don't think China wants to do that. They've had a goal for all these years of becoming independent and dominant in certain industries. And they've achieved it in many of them. Okay. So I don't think if they were going to do that, they would have done it. In the last year, they prohibited the export of any and all technologies related to rare earths from mining on down. In the last 6 months, they have asked all the rare earth companies in China to list their employees and their skills. And they said that those people will be on a list, and they will not be allowed to travel overseas to any country in which the Chinese feel is a competitor or a danger. Okay, so in other words, they're not looking to collaborate. They're looking to separate, and they've done it.
I think we could talk about this for another 10, 15, 20 minutes and not find a solution to the problem actually for all the reasons you just listed. So let me move on anyway, even though I don't really want to. Let's talk about artificial intelligence, which
Okay.
I rely on almost daily now. And I'm a man of a certain age. My beard is white. I've adapted to technology, which means I'm still employable. I'm not a relic. I'm not in a cemetery yet. What sort of demand is that putting on our energy and data infrastructure? What ripple effects do you see in the mineral supply chains? And as we are preparing for the strain
Yeah.
on the capacity.
People don't understand that the immense servers that would be required for so-called artificial intelligence, um, not only are going to eat energy, like I noticed that they say that they're building one in Wyoming or Montana that will require more electric power than the entire state does now. Okay, so everybody's saying, well, where's this energy going to come from? How many solar panels and wind turbines? Okay, that of course isn't going to happen. It's going to be oil and gas and the like. But what they're forgetting about is that these servers use gigantic stacks of memory units, disk drives, and they're saying, oh no, they're going to use solid state. Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think you're going to be building any mountain-sized solid state memories, okay? Because it's hard enough when they're small. But imagine a failure in a giant stack of solid states. So it would be incredible. What a day. Okay, so what you do is you use disk drives. And disk drives use rare permanent magnet readers on arms that move across the disk. Okay. Now, this has always been a very large use of rare permanent magnets. It isn't recognized by the typical people looking at this. But for these AI systems, my God, I mean, how many tons of these specialized magnets are you going to need? And they're not for putting your grandkids' pictures on their refrigerator. These are specialized types of magnets. And so nobody in the United States, to the best of my knowledge, is making these or has made them. So we're going to have to learn how to do that. And that's why magnet making is important, by the way. Okay. And I didn't mention before, there's so few people here that actually know how to make rare earth permanent magnets that it's almost a museum type of thing. Like, you should put a guy in a cage and say, look, this is an example of somebody who actually knows how to make a rare earth permanent magnet. Okay. But the demand is there. The military has figured out how to take care of its demand. They have, without regard to price, they have engaged companies. The only large-scale rare earth permanent magnet maker outside of China and Japan, Vakuumschmelze in Germany, is now moving to South Carolina. The only rare earth metal maker that's commercial in the Western world outside of China and Japan, LCM of England, is building a plant adjacent to that plant. And the military has said Linus will be a supplier, existing high volume supplier of separated materials for the metal maker, and MP will be the backup. Okay, so I asked a manager of one of those companies, I said, so you guys are building a 2,000-ton magnet plant in South Carolina, right? Yes. That's 1,200 tons to 2,000 tons for the military, right? I said, when are you going to build the next module? And the answer was never. What do you mean? I said, the military only cares about capacity. They have to have these magnets. They must not be involving China. Therefore, they didn't care what the cost was. We told them what it'd have to be. They said, okay. Now, the private sector goes on price, not capacity. They cannot pay 2 and 3 times the China price. So what's going to happen here for all these magnets, AI, EVs, wind turbines, all those magnets, it'll depend on the tariff because the Chinese prices are pretty low on these non-specialized magnets. And so if you put 100% tariff, they're still going to be cheaper than we could make them here. 200% tariff, I'm not sure. But I can tell you that here in Detroit, the car companies will tell you, but not publicly, that they're going to keep buying from China until the price becomes unsustainable. Because the actual cost of those magnets to go into the motors is not a big part of the cost of a car. Okay? So right now they're paying, quite frankly, for the magnets, less than $50 a kilogram. If they have to pay $100, they'll do it. More than that, they'll have to think about it. I mean, if the only way they can get a magnet out of Vakuumschmelze or MP or whatever is $150, right now they don't want to do that. But if they have to, they will.
So the Department of Defense, the Department of Energy of not just the US, but the Five Eye countries, some of which you mentioned, are really driving the market right now, period.
Yeah, and to me, that's an illusion. See, they have a very small demand. Don't talk about energy, just defense. It's just defense. Okay. So US Department of Defense will tell you, and they won't, of course, corroborate this because it's top secret, that their need is about 1,200 tons a year of specialized magnets. Okay. So that's maybe 5% or less of the domestic American market. They're all set. Price is not an object. Now let's look at the rest of the market. Price is an object, and we're not all set. I'm not saying we won't be able to do it, but if the American market is 20,000 tons and current production in America is 0, we've got a ways to go. And this is not making hula hoops. This is complex engineering. And so people tell me, well, this is America. We'll throw a whole bunch of money at it and that'll solve the problem. No, it won't. You're going to need to develop people who can do the engineering, and you're going to have to find manufacturing engineers who will dedicate years to getting this into mass production.
Well, why don't we work together with the ASEAN countries? They've got the technology, South Korea, Japan, Malaysia, Indonesia.
Yes.
Why can't we go stronger in that direction to solve that problem if we don't have the personnel?
Well, I'll tell you what's happening. This is a problem of deglobalization. I'm very familiar with Malaysia and Japan, and I could tell you that Japan in particular could really be helpful. There's 2 or 3 metal makers and maybe 5 or 6 magnet makers in Japan who unwisely 10 years ago moved a lot of their production to China to lower the cost. They're bringing it back right now. But what Japan doesn't have is raw materials. And to the best of my knowledge, there's no operating separation plant in Japan. There's metal making and magnet making. Now, the Japanese buy most of their light rare earths from Linus in Australia. They have a deal with them. They have now invested in Europe in a heavy rare earth separation plant in France to be fed by heavy rare earth concentrates coming out of Malaysia. Now, the Japanese have done this. Half of I don't know about all of the output of the French plant, but the French plant people tell me that some of their output will, of course, go to Europe. But at least half is dedicated to Japan, which is paying half the money for this operation. So the reason I'm mentioning this is going on. I haven't read a thing about this in the Wall Street Journal or any of the local rags. Okay. And do they not know about it? Do they not care about it? In other words, Japan is taking care of Japan, is my answer to your question. Korea is currently taking care of Korea. And believe me, Malaysia is being pressured by the Chinese. Let us come in and we'll develop your industry and we'll give you enough of your own stuff in payment. So you can, Malaysia wants to have a rare earth permanent magnet industry. Malaysia, believe it or not, makes 500,000 cars a year. They'd like to make electric cars. Okay. So Malaysia is interested in Malaysia. Korea is interested in Korea. Japan's interested in Japan. All of them love us as an export market. Don't get me wrong. Of course they do. Okay. But they don't want to show, they don't want to create competitors. Why would anybody do that? And forget about India. India is now closing in on itself. Same thing. India's got mines. They've got a separation plant. They're building a metal making plant, and they're already making magnets. The Indian market is gigantic. They figure their domestic market will eat this stuff while they're figuring out how to make it first class. In the future, maybe they'll export here, but they know they can't make the quality we need right now. Okay, so in case you're not aware of this, Linus last week announced they're going to build a magnet plant in Malaysia, 3,000-ton magnet plant. I said to their people, and where's the metal going to be coming from? The metal and alloy. They said Vietnam, where we've been working with them for 10 years. Okay, has nothing to do with the United States. That's what I'm trying to get. People need to understand. The United States is, I'm not saying we're causing deglobalizing, but we're going along with the wave, right? Okay. Don't you think other countries are interested in themselves? Of course they are. I mean, I was recently in Brazil. They want to build a rare earth permanent magnet industry for their automotive industry. Malaysia, the same. Japan is already doing it. Korea is already doing it. They're not interested in helping us except to sell us things. And, it's competitive advantage for them. You're saying, why don't they help us? They don't want to. They want to earn the money in their country, add the value in their country.
I've been thinking for about 15 years now, and I've been talking about it whenever I get the chance, but I don't know that there's a way to do this anymore based on what I just heard from you, that if we offered incentives in economic free zones here in the US and brought in some of the technological engineers and designers and folks of that ilk in Japan and South Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, friendly ASEAN countries, and have them apprentice our population here in the US because we just don't have the know-how, as you illustrated earlier. Would that even work? But you're saying, what's the incentive now for them to live here? There's
Well,
really none, is there?
I've been wondering for years. You realize the Japanese used to have many plants in America. These more than one magnet plant, certainly. Okay.
Mhm.
Now they all pulled out as the Chinese took over in the market financially. Okay. Now I'm wondering, maybe the best magnet maker in the world is a Japanese company, Shinetsu. I mean, the best quality. Why isn't there a Shinetsu plant in Detroit? Okay. And the answer from them is no feedstock, no metal, no oxide. I mean, what are we supposed to make the magnets out of? Okay. So I'm saying, well, all that's going to happen. They say, fine. When it happens, tell us. We don't build on speculation. I've had this from most of the Japanese, and the Koreans are building magnet plants in Korea. The Malaysians are building their plants in Malaysia. Okay. Why don't they come here? Because we don't have the supply chain. And that's what, okay. So here's the problem. We have one mine. We may have more than one because General Atomics, it doesn't tell us what they're doing in Wyoming at Bear Lodge. That may be one. I don't know. Okay. But that one mine we've got is one of the biggest in the world. It could really provide a lot of stuff. Okay. But we need oxides, high purity oxides separated. Then we need metals and alloys. We don't have any of that now. And the US Defense Department can go ahead with their project because they just put all the boxes together. They say, okay, what do we need in the supply chain? We need mine, Linus, MP, okay. We need separation, Linus, maybe MP. Okay, we need metal making, LCM. magnet making. That'll be vacuum smelts in Germany. Now here, okay, problem solved. Next problem. Okay, and but a private company like General Motors, what are they going to do? I mean, they don't have the resources to do it, and you may have noticed that in the last 5, 10 years, they were snookered. They were told that by the government, we will force people to buy electric vehicles. They spent, we think, $150 billion to facilitate assembly plants, parts plants, blah, blah, blah. Now, nothing didn't happen. So now they're saying, well, we're going to repurpose this Detroit word. We're going to repurpose that plant in Detroit where we're going to make EVs. We're going to make gasoline powered engines. Okay, gasoline engines. Okay. And I'm thrilled because they're bringing back the V8, my favorite GM engine. Okay. But a year ago, if you'd said V8 at General Motors, they would have, shunned you or thrown you out the door. Now, all of a sudden, we're repurposing. Okay. It's chaos, is what I'm saying. Now, you go in there today and you say, listen, if you guys will invest $250, $300 million, we can build a rare permanent magnet supply chain for your motor, for your electric motors. And they say, $250 million. Yeah. And you guarantee this? I'll give you my personal guarantee. No. Okay. So who hasn't come to them to do that? The Japanese, the Koreans. They have not said we'll do it in the United States. To the best of my knowledge, the Chinese are saying, hey, we're going to continue to supply. And I can tell you that at least one Detroit car company told me we're going to buy from China forever because best price, they know what they're doing. They've been in the business for 30 years. Okay. Now, can we overcome that? Yes. But can you tell me what kind of government subsidy and government policy can survive 3 presidential terms? Okay. Because it'll take 10 years to do this.
Jack, it's been really great catching up with you. I look forward to another chat in the very near future. Don't be a stranger, okay?
Thank you.